Brooklyn Independent Television.
Former Bushwick resident and documentary filmmaker Stefanie Joshua takes us back to a neighborhood she once knew and questions the profound changes taking place today.
I was working on my master's thesis, and the subject of the thesis that I wanted to study was my neighborhood. I'm from Bushwick, and it was undergoing a lot of change. Around the time when I was finishing up my thesis, a friend of mine that I grew up here with in Bushwick was killed in the neighborhood. And I decided to do a study of Bushwick and delinquency to kind of figure out for myself why young men were getting involved in delinquency, especially in this neighborhood. Bushwick is undergoing a lot of change right now, a lot of development. So all of those put together, I decided, you know what, this is more important for me to study. I decided to interview some people that I grew up with in the neighborhood, and I decided to film them. When doing the interviews, I thought that it would make a really interesting film topic. And while I was going through the interviews, it came together, and I felt like there was a story here that other people might be interested in. And it was a wing and a prayer, but it came together. And now, a year and a half later, you know, it's airing on television. You know, getting people comfortable with the camera is an art, and that was something I think I kind of learned a bit along the way. It definitely was a challenging process. When I decided to do the film, initially I undertook it myself, and it really was a solo effort. But the thing was, it took a lot longer for me to complete the project because I was doing it on my own. It was multi-layered. Some of it was me walking around the neighborhood and taking pictures. There are so many different layers of the film. I did do the film by myself. I interviewed actually around 12 people for my thesis. The criteria that I used for the film was that I wanted the people in the film to be born and raised in Bushwick and still currently be living here. The first parts of the interview, their background, who they were, and try to figure out what factors, you know, figured into their outlook on why they may or may not have participated in crime. One of the stats that I stumbled upon was that Bushwick, 1/5 of the neighborhood was completely vacant for my entire life, but for about 30 years, not just people not living here, but vacant lots. So for every 5 blocks, it would be equal to 1 block being completely vacant land. One of the questions that I asked the guys in the film were how they felt about the change. And I think that overall, everyone feels that what's happening here is definitely an improvement. So it was changing so rapidly, I think that, you know, people were wondering what's going on here. Nobody really knows. Everyone is pretty curious, but their outlook is very positive and hopeful. They still want to see themselves as part of this neighborhood with all of the development. I just think that there's anxiety as to whether or not they will be able to be part of what's going on here. I began to look at Bushwick in the early 70s, right around the time of the blackout and a lot of the fires that occurred here up to present date, and looking at the history and the changes that occurred and what led it to be the way it is right now. It took about, I would say, 3 years to begin the research and go to the final edit. I started with just a paper that I did for a class, interviewing a lot of people who live in the neighborhood and getting their perspective on the last 30 years of Bushwick. I went to elementary and junior high school in Bushwick. I decided to go away to school, but my dad and brother still live in Bushwick. Every time I would come by and visit, it was drastically different. There was a point in time when there was a crane on every other block. When I go to my dad's house, people would shove letters on the door saying, "We want to buy your house." It's really like rapid, so I just wondered what was going on there. So now here we are, 35 years later. A lot has changed in the neighborhood, a lot has improved, but you know, it's been a journey over my, you know, time here. In terms of crime, it's reduced, and that's, for everyone would agree that that's better. And it being developed is an improvement. Vacant lots bring lots of, Bushwick has one of the highest rates of asthma in New York City. Developing is going to helps to improve those things. There aren't a lot of resources here. There aren't a lot of advocates for tenants here. You know, will rents go up? Will people be pushed out? You know, the people who weathered the most difficult times in this neighborhood, will they have a future here? And I think that that is something that always, will stick with me, and I just wonder, is there a place? There also aren't too many parks in Bushwick, so a lot of the kids I grew up with, myself included, played on the street. And one of the most vivid memories I have was when the crack era hit New York, especially in Bushwick. The streets were filled with crack vials like sand. I think I was 8 or 9 years old around that time. The drugs haven't completely been eradicated, but it's completely, a huge step up. Kids can come out and play safely here. But back then, so many young men, specifically in Bushwick, were arrested and have gone through the system. So that is one of the biggest marks of that time period. A lot of people have criminal records from dealing in the drug trade on some level. And it was very popular to be part of that because there weren't jobs here during that time. Coming from someone who didn't expect to make a film, finishing it was just a reward. But the response that I've gotten from the film has been so absolutely fantastic. The film is shown in over 10 festivals. The film won Best Documentary in the Motor City International Film Festival. We've shown in Atlanta, LA, Detroit, Massachusetts, Martha's Vineyard, New York. It's been fantastic. Everywhere I've gone, people feel as though they relate to the story of what's happening in New York right now in their area. They have the same concerns. They can relate to the characters. It's like someone they know. So that's been the most rewarding part for me.
Follow us on Twitter at BK Independent TV.